It's about that time of day again. Welcome back to Nightly Newsletter, boys and girls. Joseph James here. It's Monday evening, August the 22nd, 2016. Hope you guys had a great weekend, by the way. The markets aren't wasting any time this week, getting a jump on the last full week of the month of August with some great opportunities setting up for tomorrow. Crude oil is bearish, S&P is sideways, while gold and euro are bullish. Euro might be teetering on a bearishness going into tomorrow, but we shall see. Either way you slice it, though, we get some great opportunities setting up for Tuesday's session. I have another great newsletter for you tonight. Plenty of tradable opportunities setting up for tomorrow. Before we jump into our charts and put the strategy together, I want to remind you the only place to watch the full-length version of this video is here on our blog at sidewaysmarkets.com. If you're watching the video right now on our YouTube channel, not to worry. There's a link in the description of the YouTube video. Follow that link. Come join me on the blog and watch the full-length version of this nightly newsletter. While you're here, don't forget, if you're not a member here at School of Trade, I've got a free pass for you to come out and test drive the trade room as a guest. Grab your free pass in the upper left-hand corner. Don't forget to join the mailing list in the lower left-hand corner. I'll send you an email every evening when our nightly newsletter is ready to go live. Below the video tonight, you can download all the charts you see me using in tonight's video. Follow that link and have all those charts ready on your computer tomorrow when you're trading. And of course, on the right-hand side, as I always remind you, you're going to learn more with me in 1 week on my free trial than you will anywhere else on the interwebs. I can guarantee you that. Join as a trial member on the right-hand side of the website, and I'm always here standing by 24/7, 365 to answer all your questions. Hit me up on the live support button on the right-hand side of the blog. Once again, hope you guys had a great weekend. We got the last full week of the month of August, and we're going to start talking about that Labor Day weekend next week, as we go into the highly anticipated fall trading season. Remember what I said last week, right? Once we crack into that last few days of August, first week of September, this now goes into some of the best trading you're going to find all year. September, October, November, December, January, February, and March. Those are the hot months of the year. Well, the cooler months of the year, but they really rev the engine of our favorite financial markets. Before we get there, though, we got a big week ahead of us here, last full week of August. Let's check the schedule for tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday, August 23rd. We have no major news. Coming from Australia, coming from our friends in Asia. That was pretty cool, though, seeing Super Mario making an appearance in the closing ceremonies at the Olympics, right? We have an ongoing joke about Super Mario in our chat room here at School of Trade, so it was pretty fun with all of our students talking about that. But anyways, back to the topic though, and again, hope you guys enjoyed all the Olympics. What a great festival. But no major news coming out of Asia, no major news coming out of Australia for tonight, so we'll go right into tomorrow's session. And we start out pretty early tomorrow morning. We got 3 o'clock, 3:30, 4 a.m. Got some market moving events there. I would imagine the big one will be that 4 a.m. report coming from the ECB tomorrow morning, right at 4 a.m. So that's going to kick off your London session tomorrow. And then, of course, we'll take a hop, skip, and a jump down to the U.S. session. We get new home sales at 10 a.m. And then I wouldn't think tomorrow night's merchandise trade is going to do much at all. Of course, we'll be back here to talk more about that before we get there anyway. So tomorrow morning, get to it early. If you're in London, don't forget to join us in the chat room tomorrow morning. Our chat room never closes. We have a ton of students in there 24/7. The London session opens up tomorrow morning at 3 a.m. We'll see you guys in our chat room tomorrow morning for that. And, of course, if you're with me tomorrow morning in the U.S. session, we'll be in the trade room together. And we open up the trade room tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. And, of course, we got that 10 a.m. news for new home sales. New home sales, always going to be a market mover, always going to be a very important news number. So we're definitely looking forward to getting that report middle of the morning tomorrow. We got Yellen on Friday afternoon. So we're definitely looking ahead of possibly a summertime Friday. So short week this week with Yellen on the schedule. 10 o'clock on Friday. We know anytime she opens up her mouth right in public, right, we're probably going to see a little bit of dip in the action in the markets. And, of course, whenever she speaks on a Friday, we know get in early, get out early. So early in, early out this week, right? Look for about a half day there on Friday. We'll talk more about that as we go. And you guys on the schedule for tomorrow. Let's dig right in here. We got crude, S&P, gold, and maybe just a little bit of the euro. The euro has a really cool chart to look at tonight, so make sure you stick around for that one at the end. Crude oil's bearish and trading at the lows of a channel this evening. Sellers have control and will be looking for opportunities to sell the highs of the channel as well as any resistance level overhead until the trend changes. One thing that stands out on this chart is that we haven't recently finished channel rotation back to the highs of this channel, which tells us that sellers are willing to be more aggressive in order to avoid missing the move lower. You'll notice the last few times it tried to go back to the high of this bear channel, it was unsuccessful, right? What is that? Obviously, sellers are just selling it as it comes off this low right now. So we got some aggressive sellers in this market right now. Buyers, unfortunately, you guys got to stay patient right now, waiting for a strong push higher. You got to hold a pullback and then look for a measured move up to the battle zone around 48.12. So really, for the most part right now, you can kind of look at this as a spike in channel. It's a little bit ugly. It's kind of like an offset spike in channel or a delayed spike in channel. You know, we typically get that strong spike down, and then of course the channel, right, begins out like that. And of course we're looking to sell the high of that spike in channel, and then of course we draw our correction zone. We of course cover all this inside of the intermediate course here at School of Trade, right, looking to sell that correction zone, right? That's what your typical spiking channel looks like. What we're getting right now is we're getting this kind of strong move down, and then it kind of went up, and then it said, I think we're going to go channeling now, and so now it's kind of channeling out here, right, from here. But one thing we're noticing right now, though, is, and again, this is kind of your, right, there's your spike down, there's your channel. It's not the typical look of that spike in channel, but it will, of course, act the same way, right? The bears are clearly in charge. Anytime price comes back to the high of the channel, anytime price comes back to a previous area of resistance, we expect that sellers will be looking to enter the market and sell this sucker right back down. One thing, though, that you can definitely see here, though, is looking at these last few attempts to rotate, they didn't finish rotation. Now, this does happen sometimes, you know, a lot. Well, in fact, it happens quite often. You know, we see this most often when it's a bearish market. I'm not sure why that is. It may just be a little bit of hindsight bias on my part, or survivorship bias, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is, you know, sometimes what happens is the market's so bearish that it kind of just grinds lower like this. And you know, once we see a few examples of the lack of rotation, then we pretty much know, okay, so apparently sellers just want everything, right? Give me whatever you got available, I want to sell it, right? Because apparently they are anticipating a bigger move. So anytime now we see price go back up above any of these swings, we have to assume, right, traps and buyer failures will get sold right back down, right? That obviously now is going to be in play here right now because of what we're seeing over the last few attempts to rotate. Remember, guys, the most, really the most effective sell would be selling up at the high, right? I mean, let's not lose sight of this. I want to sell the high just like everybody else does, but apparently there's something in the water here right now that is giving those sellers, right, a little bit of aggression, right? They're trying to sell, even selling at the low. It might be because the news we heard from China over the weekend, right? We heard a lot about them increasing exports of gasoline. But you know what? In all reality, we might have just been a little bit too close to $50 a barrel, and it's time to go back down to 40 again. Although I'm not going to make any predictions, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing turns around and hits $50 a barrel later on this week. I'll let the chart tell me what it wants to do next. But what we know right now, though, is we know this market is bearish, and we know that the signs that we're seeing from the price action, that's all we can rely on, is that every time this price comes back up, it's getting sold. It's getting sold before it even gets to the high of that channel, right? So anytime we get back to the moving average, I've located a resistance trend line coming down, right? And of course, sellers now looking for opportunities back at the trend line, back at resistance, back at the high of the channel, right? So any of these areas of resistance, we will be looking for selling opportunities. And selling opportunities, my favorite selling opportunity is always going to be a buyer failure, right? Up above, buyer failure, and back down. So assuming here now, let's just assume we go back up to a swing high here, right? Back up, buyers try to buy the pullback, right? And failure back down. So as this price goes up to areas of resistance, sellers are looking for traps, looking for failures, and of course, as the market comes back down, looking for continuations on the way back down. Don't forget, we teach the channels in the intermediate course. We teach the proper entry triggers, right? The traps, the failures, the continuations in the advanced course. What about the buyers right now? Right? What about the buyers right now? Well, this is where the buyers, we have to assume this is your correction zone, right? This is pretty much your correction zone up here. So my line in the sand right now is pretty much 48.12. I don't think we're going to get any real room to breathe here for the buyers until we can get, first of all, a real strong break higher, right? So the first thing is, I can't even think about being a buyer in this market until we see some incredible strength. And I'm going to say the same thing I say pretty much every time we talk about this stuff, and that is, if you're in a bear market and you want to be a buyer, the only way you can be a buyer is if you see such strength from the buy side that it basically scares the hell out of the sellers, right? The sellers say, I don't want to sell that, right? And it also gives other buyers the confidence now to come in and buy it, right? So when I say strength, I mean, this needs to be a pretty, we're talking, it needs to be something like you saw back here, right? It needs to be a very strong, consecutive, right, real strong move higher here. Get that moving average to come up, right? And then they got to hold that pullback. Okay, that's the only thing that is going to give us the guts to be a buyer right now in a market like this. Because as this thing goes higher, we assume more sellers are going to enter this market. Also now, remember too, is we have the battle zone up here. So we assume that there are sellers with just limit orders, right? Limits to sell, just waiting right here, right? We assume there's limits waiting here. Right? They're waiting here. They're waiting above all of these prior swings. So it's not going to be until we can get and stay above 48, 47 that I really think the buyers can kind of breathe a sigh of relief. Is it possible tomorrow? Oh, absolutely it's possible. Anything is possible in the financial markets, right? You'll never hear me say can't or won't, right? Or always, because that doesn't exist in professional traders' vocabulary. So right now, sellers looking for price to get up off this low, to sell it back down. Just be careful selling low or selling into the double down. There is a measured move target down here at 46.70. 46.70, of course, being the ultimate measured move to the downside. So as this price goes higher, unless we see this just bam, right? Unless we see this thing torch through some of these resistance levels and then hold a pullback. Remember, even if they do get a real strong move higher here, if they can't hold that pullback, this will be attacked by the sellers to get back down to that low. But it's going to take a real strong move higher, really intimidate those sellers, right? You want that strong move higher. You want the bears to go, whoa, I'm not going to sell that. That's exactly what you need the bears to be thinking from that strong move higher, right? It should look almost identical to something like this, right? When you see it move lower like that, the last thing you think of is, ooh, I want to buy this thing right now, right? That's not going to go through your mind. That's the type of move you want to see if you want to be a buyer here. And then again, it's got to hold a strong pullback, but you're probably not going to have too much room because we expect to see sellers here. We expect to see sellers here. I expect to see sellers all the way up until we can get and stay above that 48, 47, because you know people are drooling over going all the way back to 40 here. All right, I'm not going to make any predictions on this. I always trade the chart, right? The chart never lies, right? We may see this market completely turn around here based on what happened over the weekend from China, and it may be back to 50 here by the end of the week here. So we do not know, but that's at least what we know for right now, and that's the plan for tomorrow. Let's keep going. We go from a really great looking trend to this. Even the S&P is trading completely sideways inside a triangle this evening. Is it me, or does it feel like every big asset manager right now is net short, which they still have some way of convincing me that being net short still involves long positions in the equity market? I'll leave that to the news media to try to explain that away. But the reality is it definitely feels like this S&P right now has gone a little bit to cash, hasn't it? It definitely does, right? We need these traders to come back from the Hamptons and put their money to work. This is obviously the S&P 500 futures contract, so it's a lot of hedging, right? It's a lot of speculative trading right now, and boy, oh boy, you look left on this, and you can definitely see this market is clearly range bound, right? It's clearly range bound. There's a long